They say a battlefield is not a place of strategy. It is a place of truth. And that truth either lives inside the warrior, or it destroys him. The ancient samurai believed that a mind filled with fear, anger, noise, or hesitation was already defeated. The moment your thoughts control you, you are no longer the master of your destiny. You become a prisoner inside your own skull in feudal Japan, where death moved like a shadow behind every decision. The samurai developed a secret form of mental discipline, a state of mind where thought falls away, emotion clears, and the warrior acts from pure presence. They called it Mushin, no mind, not empty like weakness, empty like clarity, empty like the still water that reflects the moon, empty like the warrior who walks into battle with no fear of what might happen. The story begins in a small dojo in the mountains of Edo. Snow had been falling for days, and the world outside was silent. Inside, a young warrior named Reizo knelt before his master. He was powerful, disciplined, and talented beyond his peers. But his flaw was not his sword. It was his mind. His heart burned with anger. His thoughts raced like horses charging in opposite directions. He wanted glory, recognition, and revenge against those who wronged his family. But these desires were chains around his spirit. His master, Kenshin, saw through him as if his heart were a window. "You hold your sword like a warrior," Kenshin said, "but you hold your mind like a prisoner." Reizo remained silent. Shame thickened in his chest. Kenshin spoke again. "Every warrior believes the battle is fought with steel. But before steel touches steel, the true battle happens in the mind. The enemy is not out there. The enemy is the noise inside you." Reizo looked up. "How do I silence it?" Kenshin closed his eyes and answered with a single word: Mushin. The following days were not spent training with swords. Reizo expected drills, combat stances, or tactical exercises. But his master taught him something far more difficult. He taught him to sit, to breathe, to listen to the wind as it touched the temple walls, to watch his anger rise and fall, like a wave that did not belong to him. He taught him to become the silent observer, instead of the slave to his emotions. At first, Reizo felt trapped. His body remained still, but his mind wrestled with memories of injustice, humiliation, and loss. His father had been executed for a crime he did not commit. His family name had been dishonored. The world had shown him no justice, and those responsible still walked free. His pain felt like a fire that could only be answered by the sword. But Kenshin said something Reizo never forgot. When a man seeks justice with a mind poisoned by hatred, he destroys justice. When he seeks honor from a place of fear, he loses honor. Only when the mind becomes empty can the heart become true. And so the first lesson of Mushin began, not with silence but with the confrontation of inner noise. For Reizo, this was more terrifying than any battlefield. To face the enemies within. Insecurity, rage, doubt, grief required a courage far greater than facing an opponent. One morning, just before dawn, Kenshin led him to the training ground. The air was freezing. The snow had hardened into glass. Reizo stood barefoot, his breath turning into vapor. Kenshin spoke. "Today the battle begins." Reizo expected an opponent. Instead, Kenshin handed him a wooden sword and ordered, "Strike the air." Reizo obeyed. Again and again. His arms ached. His breath burned. His legs trembled. When he finally collapsed, Kenshin said, "That is how you fight the world." But the samurai learns to fight differently. Kenshin raised his own sword, not striking, simply holding it. "You will listen," Kenshin said, "to the snow falling, to the wind, to the silence beneath all things." Reizo closed his eyes. For the first time, he heard everything. The way the air brushed across his skin, the soft crackle of ice, the distant echo of water beneath frozen stone. His mind began to sharpen, not through force, but through surrender. Kenshin spoke words that felt as old as time. Mushin is not the absence of thought. It is the absence of attachment to thought. Your mind must become like the sky. Clouds pass through it, but they leave no trace. This was the second lesson. The lesson of detachment. Too many people in this world are chained to their past. They react the same way, think the same way, repeat the same patterns again and again. The world has taught them to fight externally, against other people, against injustice, against society. But the samurai understood something deeper. The true battlefield is internal. Reizo thought Mushin would mean running away from emotion. He thought peace meant becoming numb. But Mushin was the opposite. It required him to feel everything so intensely that no feeling could overpower him. It taught him to see the world clearly, not filtered through trauma, grief, or rage. One night, as he sat in meditation, a memory returned to him. The night his father died. The shouts, the judgment, the humiliation, the sword, the injustice, the tears he never allowed himself to cry. His heart broke open. He wept for hours. And this was the third lesson. Healing begins when the warrior is unafraid to feel. The next morning, Kenshin looked at him, saw the shift in his eyes, and smiled. "You are beginning to understand," he said. "When the mind empties, truth begins to speak." Reizo was confused. "Truth?" Kenshin answered. "The world lied to you. It told you strength is the absence of weakness. But true strength is the ability to walk through pain with dignity. To stand tall in the face of injustice without becoming injustice." Those words changed Reizo forever. Days passed. Months passed. His meditation deepened. His mind became sharper, more still, more controlled. He no longer reacted to anger. He observed it. He no longer chased vengeance. He allowed the pain to transform him. One morning, Kenshin handed him a katana and said, "Today, you will learn the final lesson." Reizo stood ready. Kenshin lifted his sword. No warning. No signal. No instruction. He struck. Reizo did not think. He did not analyze. He did not hesitate. His body moved before his brain had time to form a thought. The swords clashed, then stopped. Kenshin nodded. That movement came from Mushin, a mind clear of hesitation. That is the samurai way. That is the empty mind. Reizo understood. Mushin was not death. It was life, not silence, but truth. Not a rejection of pain, but mastery over it. Mushin is the power to look into the world and see it without fear. To act without hesitation. To respond without emotion. Controlling the hand. It is the way of justice, dignity, and presence. But the world outside the temple was waiting. It was filled with corruption, cruelty, injustice, and men who believed honor could be taken by force. Reizo would soon have to walk into that world. Not to escape it, but to face it with a heart that could not be broken. And that is where the true story begins. Winter finally ended. The snow melted from the rooftops, the mountain ice gave way to flowing rivers, and the monastery steps echoed with the first sounds of spring. But for Reizo, the seasons had changed long before the world did. Something inside him had thawed, softened, and then hardened again into something stronger. The fear had dissolved. The anger had become fuel rather than poison. His mind, once crowded with memories and ghosts, had become calmer than the surface of a still lake. Yet Kenshin knew something Reizo did not. Mushin is not achieved by isolation alone. The mountains teach clarity, but the world teaches truth. A warrior can only discover the meaning of his mind when he walks back into the chaos that once broke him. One morning, Kenshin handed Reizo a folded paper. The seal was unmistakable, the crest of Lord Yoshinaga, the man responsible for Reizo's father's death, the man who had. Message was brief. There is unrest in the capital. A rebellion is brewing. Samurai are being used as pawns. Honor has become a weapon. Reizo looked to his master. "Why are you showing me this?" Kenshin replied. "Because the world that broke you is calling again. The Mushin taught in isolation must be tested in motion." Reizo felt something stir in his chest. Not anger, but a quiet certainty. He remembered his master's words. When the mind empties, truth begins to speak. And truth was speaking now. For the first time in 2 years, Reizo descended the mountain. His journey took him across rivers, through villages, and along the ancient Takeda Road. Everywhere he went, he saw suffering. Peasants taxed until starvation. Soldiers patrolling fields that never belonged to them. Samurai who once protected the people now protected only power. Justice had fractured. Honor had turned into vanity. The sword was no longer a guardian. It had become a threat. As Reizo traveled, he encountered men who had lost faith. A farmer whose land was seized by officials. A widow whose son was conscripted without cause. A child who asked him, "Can samurai still protect us?" That question struck him like a blade. He realized something profound. A warrior does not exist for himself. He exists for others, for justice, for dignity, for the silent and powerless. That night, Reizo camped by a riverbank. The air was cool, and the moon shone on the moving water like silver. He meditated just as he had learned. The world around him vanished. The sound of the river became his breath. The breeze became his heartbeat. He entered the Mushin state effortlessly. Then, suddenly behind him, a whisper of movement, presence. A sword was drawn. Without thought, without fear, Reizo turned, blade raised. His attacker froze. Their swords touched. His opponent was young, desperate, and trembling. "I don't want to fight," the man stuttered. "I was told samurai travel this road with gold. My family is starving." Reizo lowered his weapon. "Food can be earned," Reizo said. "Honor cannot." The man fell to his knees. "I have no honor left." Reizo helped him stand. "Mushin can only exist where dignity exists. You have not lost yours. It is simply buried." He gave the man food from his pack and walked away, leaving the man in tears. This was a lesson Mushin had gifted him. Compassion is stronger than punishment. As he neared the capital, rumors spread. Rebellions, assassinations, the merchant class rising. Samurai selling their swords to survive. The world was changing, perhaps for the worse. Reizo entered Edo at night. The city was colder than the mountain, not in temperature, but in spirit. Every street carried fear. Every corner held distrust. People whispered about Lord Yoshinaga. One day he will fall. He controls the courts. He replaced honor with politics. The same man who destroyed Reizo's family now ruled with even greater cruelty. Reizo felt no rage, no trembling, no thirst for revenge. The Mushin had taken that from him. He did not travel to kill. He traveled to restore what was broken. But fate has a way of testing every warrior. The next day, while walking through a marketplace, he heard a scream. Soldiers dragged an elderly merchant through the street. His crime was simple. He refused to pay a bribe. The merchant begged, "I only want to survive." The soldiers spit on him. One raised his sword to strike. Reizo stepped forward. "That man has done no wrong." The soldiers laughed. "Then who are you to decide?" In ancient Japan, there were unwritten rules of honor. One was clear. A man who stands silent in the face of injustice has already surrendered his soul. Reizo spoke calmly. "Release him. This is not justice." The soldiers sneered and attacked. Steel flashed. The crowd gasped. Reizo did not think. He did not hesitate. His sword moved before intention. His body flowed like water. His blade met theirs not with force, but with presence. Mushin, empty mind. No emotion clouded him. No ego drove him. The fight ended in seconds. No one died, only disarmed, only stopped, only held back. The marketplace fell silent. People stared, not in fear, in awe. "Who are you?" someone asked. Reizo answered, "A samurai of no clan." That phrase had power. A samurai without a master was seen as dangerous. But what they felt was not danger. It was hope. News traveled fast. Whispers in tea houses. Rumors in the streets. The city buzzed. A lone samurai stands against injustice. He does not fear Yoshinaga's men. He fights with a stillness no warrior has ever seen. And in the deepest shadows of Edo Castle, Lord Yoshinaga heard the name. Reizo. Memories returned. The day he executed Reizo's father. A man who refused to bow, refused to lie, refused to betray truth. Yoshinaga had not forgotten. He ordered a message. Bring this samurai to me. But Reizo did not come to serve. He did not come to kneel. He did not come for vengeance. He came for justice, for dignity, for the restoration of something ancient, sacred, and necessary. Honor. That night, Reizo walked through the castle gardens. Cherry blossoms drifted like snow. The moon reflected in the pond below. It was quiet, still. The kind of silence only a warrior understands. Kenshin's voice echoed in his mind. Mushin is not the absence of thought. It is the absence of fear. He knelt and touched the ground. The earth felt warm beneath his palm. He whispered to the night, I am not the same man who left these gates. I am not the child who lost everything. I am the mind that sees clearly. I am the heart that no longer breaks. But as he rose, someone appeared from the shadows. A voice Reizo knew. You should not have come back. Reizo turned. Standing before him was the one man he thought he would never see again. Takeda, the childhood friend who betrayed him. The man who joined Yoshinaga's side, who helped destroy Reizo's family. Takeda's armor gleamed. His sword was drawn. His eyes were cold. Justice is dead, Takeda said. Only power remains. Walk away. Reizo's heart did not race. His breath did not change. His pulse stayed calm. Telling a samurai to walk away from truth is like asking the sun not to rise, Reizo replied. Takeda tightened his grip. You learned Mushin in the mountains. But Mushin has no place here. The world is cruel. Honor is gone. Dignity was a myth. Reizo shook his head. You do not understand Mushin. It is not escape from cruelty. It is the strength to transform it. Takeda looked at him with bitterness. Why do you care about others? Why risk your life for people who cannot fight for themselves? Reizo answered, because strength without compassion is tyranny, and every samurai must choose which side of history he stands on. Takeda's voice cracked. I had no choice. Reizo stepped closer. We always have a choice, even when the world tells us we don't. Those words pierced deeper than any sword. Takeda trembled, not from fear of Reizo, but fear of himself. Fear that he had become the very thing he once swore to destroy. That is why I returned, Reizo said. Not to kill you, but to remind you of what it means to be a warrior. Takeda closed his eyes. A single tear escaped. For a moment, silence. For a moment, hope. But destiny does not soften easily. From the castle tower, trumpets sounded. Soldiers approached. Torches lit the night. Yoshinaga had summoned his army. Takeda whispered, It is too late. Reizo stared into the darkness ahead. No, it is only the beginning. Because Mushin did not teach him how to escape. It taught him how to stand his ground. Not as a victim. Not as a broken man. But as a warrior who fights with clarity, dignity, and purpose. And the battle for justice was about to begin. Reizo stood at the entrance of Edo Castle as the army gathered. Torches glowed like angry stars in the night. The soldiers marched forward with shields, spears, and blades gleaming under the moonlight. The air was thick with tension. Every breath carried history, power, and fear. But Reizo's mind did not waver. His heartbeat stayed steady. His hand rested gently on the hilt of his sword, not as a threat, but as a reminder of discipline. He remembered Kenshin's words, the moment you fear the enemy, you have already lost. Mushin is the state where fear cannot enter. Takeda stepped beside him, torn between loyalty and regret. Even he could feel the shift in the air. Reizo was no longer the boy he once knew. He was no longer driven by revenge. He was guided by something stronger, something rare. A commander rode forward on horseback and pointed his spear at Reizo. In the name of Lord Yoshinaga, surrender your sword and kneel. Reizo answered calmly, I kneel only to justice. The commander sneered. Justice belongs to the powerful. Reizo's voice cut through the night like steel. Justice belongs to truth, A single arrow was fired. The soldiers charged. The world exploded into motion. Reizo moved without thought. His blade did not cut from anger, cut from presence. His body flowed like the river, unpredictable, unstoppable. Every strike was precise, every movement silent. He did not fight with rage. He fought with clarity. This was Mushin. He parried a spear, disarmed a sword, knocked a shield aside, yet he never killed. He struck only to disable, to protect, to neutralize. His strength was not cruelty, it was control. Takeda watched in disbelief. He had trained for war his entire life, yet he had never seen someone move like that. Like silence itself had been shaped into a warrior. "You cannot win," the commander shouted. Reizo responded. "I am not here to win. I am here to remind you of the truth you abandoned." One by one, the soldiers fell back, not from defeat, but from something deeper, respect. The Mushin state radiated around him like a force. The battlefield itself seemed to bow. When the fighting ceased, Reizo walked forward into the castle gates. The soldiers, who minutes ago saw him as an enemy, now watched in silence. Not a single arrow was drawn. Not a single blade lifted. Honor, even when buried, always recognizes itself. Reizo passed through long corridors decorated with golden tapestries and the symbols of power. But power meant nothing now. Only truth mattered. At the heart of the castle was the Hall of Judgment, where Yoshinaga held his court. Massive doors opened with a thunderous echo. Reizo entered. Lord Yoshinaga sat above the chamber, wearing black armor, his robe shimmering with wealth and arrogance. He was older now, but his eyes held the same coldness that once condemned Reizo's family. Around him sat nobles, generals, politicians, men who controlled cities, armies, and fate. Their whispers filled the hall. "That is the boy who survived the execution. He has returned. He seeks vengeance." But their fears did not move Reizo. Yoshinaga rose from his seat. "So, you have come to die." Reizo spoke as calmly as water. "I have come to reveal the truth." The hall erupted in laughter and scorn. Yoshinaga waved his hand, silencing them. "You were a child when I executed your father, a boy who clung to impossible ideals. The world does not care about justice. The world cares about power." Reizo stepped forward, unshaken. "Power without honor is a prison. You are a prisoner of your own greed." Yoshinaga's expression faltered for a moment. Only a moment. Then he hardened. "Your father was executed because he refused to serve me." Reizo answered, "My father chose principle over fear. That is the difference between a leader and a tyrant." A murmur rippled through the hall. Even the loyalists shifted. The truth had a strange way of cracking stone. Yoshinaga descended the steps slowly. "I gave this land peace." Reizo met his eyes. "You gave it silence. Peace is not the absence of war. Peace is the presence of justice." Takeda entered the hall, armor stained, face trembling. Yoshinaga turned to him. "You betrayed me." Takeda's voice shook. "I betrayed myself long before I betrayed you." Yoshinaga laughed bitterly. "Is that what this is? A reunion of broken men?" Reizo raised his voice so the entire castle heard. "No, this is where corruption ends." Yoshinaga drew his sword. "Then let us finish what began years ago." The hall cleared. Guards stepped back. Every noble held their breath. Reizo moved into position. He felt the world slow, his mind entering the Mushin state effortlessly. No fear. No anger. No doubt. Just presence. Yoshinaga lunged. His strikes were powerful but wild, driven by ego and fury. Reizo did not block with force. He redirected, deflected, flowed. To the untrained eye, it was swordsmanship. To a warrior, it was meditation in motion. Yoshinaga grew frustrated. "Fight me like a man!" Reizo answered. "I am fighting you like a samurai." Their swords clashed again, sparks flying like stars in the night. Reizo could see Yoshinaga's weaknesses. His grip tightened too early, his stance widened with rage. His emotions led his movements like chains. "You killed my father," Reizo said. "Yes," Yoshinaga snarled. "And I would do it again." Reizo did not react, not with anger, but with realization. Yoshinaga had never been strong. His power came from fear, intimidation, and control. His sword did not hold truth. It held insecurity. Reizo stepped forward, blade ready. "You live in the past you created. You are ruled by hatred. That is why you will always lose." The final strike came, not from anger, not from revenge, but from clarity. Reizo disarmed him in one movement. Yoshinaga's sword clattered across the floor. The hall gasped. The nobles froze. Yoshinaga fell to his knees. "You had everything," Reizo said. "Honor, loyalty, power. And you destroyed it because you could not silence your fear." Yoshinaga looked up, desperation in his voice. "Kill me then. Finish it." Reizo shook his head. "A dead enemy teaches nothing. A broken enemy teaches everything." He threw his sword to the ground. "The blade is not justice. The mind is." Silence filled the hall. A different silence. Powerful silence. A dignified silence. Yoshinaga stared at him, unable to understand this strength. A strength no weapon could defeat. "You spared me?" Reizo answered. "I spared you because Mushin taught me to fight without hate. Because justice must be restored, not repeated." The nobles fell to their knees. Even the soldiers bowed. For the first time in years, the castle felt the presence of true honor. Takeda approached Reizo. "You have returned what we lost. Dignity." Reizo placed a hand on his shoulder. "It is not mine. It belongs to all who still believe." The castle gates opened. The people of Edo gathered outside, thousands of eyes watching, waiting, hoping. Reizo walked forward, without a crown, without a title, without an army, only with the truth. And the city bowed. Not to a conqueror, not to a ruler, but to a warrior who fought with an empty mind and a full heart. He had defeated corruption, not by killing, but by choosing a higher path. He had brought honor back, not by force, but by presence. He had shown the world what Mushin truly meant. Not silence, not numbness, not escape, but freedom. And freedom is the greatest power a warrior can ever hold. Because the mind emptied of fear cannot be controlled. And that was only part of Reizo's destiny. The first dawn after Yoshinaga's defeat was unlike any the city had seen in decades. The castle that once loomed as a symbol of fear now stood silent, humbled, washed in the soft glow of sunrise. The people gathered at the gates, still uncertain if what they witnessed was real. Could a single warrior truly bring down tyranny without spilling blood? Reizo stood among them, not above, not ahead, but with them. His sword was sheathed, his posture calm. For a moment, he looked less like a samurai and more like a guardian spirit of the land itself. Takeda approached him quietly, his armor removed, his sword wrapped in cloth. He bowed deeply, not to Reizo, but to the idea that had saved them all. "You changed the fate of a nation without killing a single man," Takeda said. Reizo smiled faintly. "I did nothing. It was the truth that changed it." Takeda looked down. "I thought strength came from power." Reizo shook his head. "Strength comes from emptiness, when the heart is not controlled by fear." The people began to celebrate. Some wept, some prayed, some simply stood in silence, letting relief wash over them. The city felt alive again. Children ran through the streets. Merchants opened their shops. Farmers returned to the gates with produce instead of fear. Yet Reizo felt a strange heaviness in his chest. Peace was won, but the journey of the warrior was not over. Mushin was not a victory. It was a path, a lifetime of understanding. Takeda seemed to sense this. "You will stay and rule us as our leader?" Reizo gently shook his head. "A samurai does not rule. He serves." Takeda frowned. "Then what will you do?" Reizo gazed at the horizon. "I will continue the path." At that moment, the doors of the castle opened again. Yoshinaga, stripped of armor and robes of power, appeared under guard. He was no longer a lord, only a man confronted by the weight of his choices. Reizo stepped closer. "You asked me why I did not kill you," he said. Yoshinaga did not lift his eyes. "Because you are weak." Reizo smiled, not in mockery, but in understanding. "I spared you because I saw myself in you, the fear of losing control, losing everything. Mushin taught me that a warrior does not destroy enemies. He destroys fear." For the first time, Yoshinaga's voice softened. "And if I had killed you?" Reizo looked him in the eye. "It would only prove you were still a prisoner of your own mind." Yoshinaga was led away, not to execution, but to face justice and reflection. For the first time, he did not resist. Reizo turned to leave the city, but Takeda called out to him one last time. "Reizo, what should we tell the people? What should they remember?" Reizo paused. "Tell them this. A sword is not made to take life, but to protect it. Fear is not meant to rule the mind. And honor is not inherited. It is chosen." Takeda bowed deeply, tears pooling in his eyes. "And the Mushin? What should they learn?" Reizo answered, "The Mushin meditation teaches us to empty the mind so truth may enter. A mind full of fear cannot see the path. A mind full of anger cannot act with honor. When the mind becomes still, we see clearly." He turned and walked away. But the story did not end at the castle walls. A month passed. Then too, Reizo journeyed through villages and mountain passes, teaching the Mushin to those who were ready. Farmers learned to speak boldly. Widows learned to stand tall. Children learned courage. Warriors learned peace. Everywhere he went, he carried no banners, no symbols, no titles. Only his presence. One evening, while resting at a shrine near the old pilgrim road, Reizo met a girl who was crying. Her mother was sick, and her family had no money left. Reizo sat beside her. "Why are you sad?" he asked gently. She wiped her eyes. "Because I am weak." Reizo shook his head. "Weakness is not crying. Weakness is believing you have no strength left." She looked up. "What should I do?" Reizo spoke as his master spoke to him. "When the mind empties, the path appears." She nodded slowly, hope flickering in her eyes like a candle. Reizo gave her a coin and said, "Courage begins with one small act." As she ran home, Reizo looked to the sky. Clouds drifted like the passing of time. Every soul deserved dignity. Every heart deserved justice. Every warrior deserved clarity. Later that night, as rain began to fall, Reizo found shelter beneath an ancient cedar tree. He knelt, closed his eyes, and began to meditate. The rain became rhythm. The wind became breath. The earth became stillness. He entered the Mushin once again. But this time, it was different. He saw faces. Not of enemies, but of people he had helped. A mother saved. A child protected. A city redeemed. His father's voice echoed in the wind. "You have restored what was taken from us. Not through war, through honor." Reizo spoke softly into the night. "I understand now. The mind must empty not to escape life, but to face it." As he finished the meditation, he opened his eyes. Someone stood before him. Kenshin. The old master approached with a smile. "You have walked a long road." Reizo bowed. "You knew this journey would lead me here." Kenshin placed a hand on his shoulder. "I knew your heart. Fear once ruled you. Now you walk with courage." Reizo asked him, "Is the Mushin finally complete?" Kenshin shook his head. "Mushin is never finished. It is a river that flows forever. When you think you have mastered it, you have already lost your way." Reizo nodded slowly. This was the ultimate truth. Kenshin continued. "But you have learned what most never do. The empty mind is not a void. It is freedom. Freedom from the past. Freedom from the future. Freedom from the weight others place upon you." Reizo felt peace. Not the peace of victory, but the peace of understanding. "What now?" Reizo asked. Kenshin smiled. "Now you teach others. Not with words, but with your life." Reizo realized then that his story was no longer just his own. It belonged to anyone who had ever suffered injustice, anyone who had ever been silenced, anyone who had been betrayed. Because Mushin was not a method for warriors alone, it was a method for the broken, for the fearful, for the oppressed, for the hopeful. Reizo stood and looked toward the rising moon. The world was vast. People needed guidance, strength, and truth. He walked forward, not knowing where the path led, but knowing that he no longer needed to see it clearly. The path would reveal itself. It always did to those who carried the Mushin. As Reizo descended from the shrine and disappeared into the trees, the voice of Kenshin echoed one last time. The greatest victory is the one fought within. And when the mind is empty, the warrior is finally free. And so, the Mushin Temple was not a place of stone. It was the heart of every person who refused to be ruled by fear. It lived in the cities, in the mountains, in the quiet moments of decision. Reizo's legacy did not become legend because of the battles he fought. It became legend because of the battles he refused to fight. Because he understood that true strength was not measured by the blood spilled, but by the lives protected. It was not about the enemy defeated, but the dignity restored. Justice was not a sword. It was a promise. And for generations to come, people spoke of the samurai who emptied his mind, not to escape the world, but to change it. They remembered his name, Reizo. The warrior who walked away from power. The warrior who chose compassion over revenge. The warrior who discovered the true meaning of Mushin, and the world was never the same again.